We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we dive into the art of songwriting, celebrate the artists behind the music and explore the stories that bring their songs to life. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and as always, thank you for joining us. Our guest today on the podcast is the incredibly talented Melbourne rock band Slowly Slowly. The beloved Australian outfit has built a loyal following with their knack for irresistible hooks, heartfelt melodies, and raw emotions. And last week, they returned with their most dynamic record yet, titled Forgiving Spree. This new album sees the band swinging for the fences with a live sound that captures the energy and excitement of their live shows, while lyrically delivering some of their most mature work to date, yet still maintaining that signature Slowly Slowly charm. Now, in today's episode, we're thrilled to be chatting with frontman Ben Stewart about Forgiving Spree and why the band chose to take an almost live approach to this record. We delve into the songwriting process behind it all and how some songs came together after countless hours of work, while others simply seemed to fall into Ben's lap. Ben also opens up about his introduction to songwriting and how, at first, he didn't even feel like a songwriter himself. And then lastly, we touch on the band's upcoming tour in April and what fans can expect from these shows. Now, we want to say a massive thank you to Gloria for her help with today's episode and remind everyone that Forgiving Spree is out right now, wherever you get your music. You'll find links in the show notes today to purchase the record, follow Slowly Slowly on all their socials, and grab tickets to their upcoming tour. While you are in the show notes, please don't forget to follow us across our socials and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. Now let's get started. Here is our conversation with Ben Stewart from Slowly Slowly.
I broke a mirror last year. I stepped under a ladder, saw a black cat in my dreams. I opened my arms to every bad omen that a fortune teller sees.
Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Ben Stewart from Slowly Slowly. Ben, hello, sir. How's it going?
Hello, very good, thank you. How you going?
Doing very well, thank you. And thank you so much for coming to have a chat with us today on the podcast about this brand new record. I'm very kind of excited to get into it with you.
Oh, I'm pumped to talk about it. I feel like after, a few interviews and stuff, I'm finally getting my head around my own record. It's good.
I'm always very curious because I imagine that with a band like yourself, I know that there's a lot of press going on all across the world for this brand new record, Forgiving Spree. I'm curious from your perspective, from the artist's perspective, do you find yourself trying to come up with new and inventive ways almost to say the same thing each time when you get asked similar questions?
I think with things like track by tracks, that gets a little bit hard to sort of, because often you can distill a song down to, 3 or 4 sentences, but then when you have to extrapolate that across a few different media platforms, it can get a bit tricky. But in terms of just fleshing out the record, as I said, I've kind of discovered new little nuggets as I just sort of sit here doing verbal, diarrhea. And then sort of things pop out that I wasn't, even sure I knew before the interview. So I don't know. I find it all kind of like brand new, especially with podcasts and stuff when we're sort of in the moment as opposed to anything written. So yeah, I don't mind. I like it.
Look, very excited to have you here and also to kind of have a chat about the record and whether it be verbal diarrhea, whether it's unfortunately something you're having to say a few times. I do apologise, but yeah, super excited to chat Forgiving Spree. The brand new record, it is out now when people are listening to the chat. Firstly, congratulations on the record. How are you and the guys feeling with it now out in the world and available for people to enjoy?
Yeah, we're elated. We're having a great time. So we had some record in stores over the weekend where I did some solo sets and I got to mingle and see people face to face. And so it feels really real now that we've sort of stood with people face to face and got to shake hands and kiss babies and do all that sort of stuff. It feels really nice. So, and obviously for the next 3 days, we're doing some acoustic, so stripped back shows as well with a piano and stuff. So, yeah, I like all the release week activity because I get sick of sort of just banging on about it on my phone. To the internet echo chamber. Yeah, so it's not, the shows on release week are lovely because it really feels like a party.
100%. This is record number 5 for the band, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
With that, is it like a similar thing each time? Is it this kind of feeling of being able to get out there and I guess almost show your wares in a way with each record that does come out?
I think with Daisy Chain, was it? I think our last record was semi-COVID times and or just out of it. Yeah, we were just out of it. And so, I don't know, it sort of felt like we kind of were learning to walk again a little bit there. But, yeah, this feels really celebratory and everyone's happy and healthy. And there's all this touring plotted that we're not sort of, trepidatious about it being cancelled, knock on wood. But, yeah, it feels really real and natural and yeah. I actually don't think so because before that it was like Race Car Blues and that was kind of fraught with COVID stuff in 2020 and so this is one of those realizations I'm having in real time, but there's a reason that this feels so natural and easy, and it's probably because we're not as stressed. We're not thinking that it's all going to get stripped away at any moment.
I think that's totally fair. And I think almost tying in with that kind of feeling is that this record is definitely one that feels primed and ready for a live setting, and I believe was kind of built for that as well in a way. But it kind of gives off that energy of that it is almost a live record from the get-go in terms of the energy that's being conveyed, the heartfelt emotions that are being sung about from this. And I imagine that's almost like not a similar feeling, but almost ties into that previous COVID time of not being able to, or the uncertainty of whether they can go and enjoy things, that this record is that celebration of that level of freedom or that moving on from it, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, definitely engineered a lot of it to be built for the stage, and it was all in the back of my mind as we were finalising the arrangements and the mixes and stuff like that. We wanted it to be quite aggressive and big sounding and grandiose, and obviously there's a few more sort of stripped back and vulnerable moments on the record, but we as well wanted to keep everything really concise. And so I know we sort of sonically cover a lot of ground, but I hope through the billions of demos and distillation of the recording process that we got slowly to fit into one little petri dish of 9 songs, and then and hopefully it does take well to the stage, or it will be a huge failure.
Look, I don't think there is any chance of that happening, my friend. I'm totally aware, obviously, it's just human to have that thought of like you want things to go well and there's always a margin of error. But having listened to the record a few times now, I don't think that there is going to be that going on. This, honestly, such a brilliant record. So congrats again. And I guess I'm curious in terms of being able to maintain or capture the energy of like a live setting in a recorded form. As you said, like you're recording, different versions, different kind of takes of things. What is the slowly like trick to being able to trying to capture that live energy on recorded form and have it still have that energy and the spirit of almost of what you're trying to convey?
I think a huge part of it, and I have spoken a little bit about this in the past because I've been working this way for a few records now, but almost 90 to 95% of the time, the vocal that you hear is recorded from the demo. Mm-hmm. So the initial first time I've sung the song. And I think that plays a huge role in making things feel exciting and authentic, but it's quite subliminal. Like I think, I don't know, objectively there might be if you re-sung it, there might be lines here and there, you're like, oh my God, that's so much better. But just as a whole picture, I feel like often the demo just seems to, there's something that, there's a little bit of magic in there, and I think you're always trying to recapture it when you retrack. And I didn't want to, after getting myself stuck in those circles before, you're trying to retrack, but it's just not working. A few records ago, I started taking demo vocals a little bit more seriously and always recording them in a booth, and just so that we weren't getting stuck down the track with, the quality's not there, but the performance is, but, c'est la vie, we've got to do it again. I've tried to be a little bit more meticulous with the recording of the demos so that we can carry elements through. So I think that does probably aid the energy a little bit, and have like an exciting thing, because often the melodies, when you don't know a melody, you sing it kind of differently for the first time. Like it's not, none of it is karaoke, if that makes sense. It feels like you're on the edge of it. It could fall off at any second. You're going to sing a wrong note. You're going to sing the wrong lyric, So I do like that. That probably makes things feel like kind of lively. But often, like, I have to give a huge shout out to John Gilmore, who mixed the record, because he also mixed Daisy Chain, and he has a way of making things feel really exciting and aggressive without being fatiguing. And I think, he's a huge component of our sound now that we've formed such a great working relationship. So, he plays a huge role in that too. We're kind of recording and writing, almost envisaging him at the end of the process now, and like how he would want things to sound. And so between those few things, hopefully it does, capture a live energy.
It definitely does. Yourself, the band, and John have done a fantastic job with it. I would love to discuss as well. I know not only John, but I believe that there was a few others that you kind of worked on the record with as well. I think Courtney Ballard and Susie Shin, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yep. Who separately have worked with artists like Weezer, Stand Atlantic, I think Panic at the Disco. Like there's quite an assortment of names on both of their respective resumes. What was it about these two that I guess brought them into the fold this time to help bolster and make an even stronger record?
We just hit it off when I was over in LA on a writing trip. I had a session with Courtney, and he pushed me so hard with vocally, and he was just extremely meticulous in the front end. And I can, if you're working in a vacuum by yourself, a lot of the time you get a bit lax, you start to let things slip through the gate, and you get a bit lazy when you're doing your own production, and there's no one looking over your shoulder. And so he really just kept me in check, and he was just great at being like, yes, that idea is great, or no, that idea, let's, maybe you should rethink that, or like he'd be like, no, he goes, that's great, but let's save that vocal note for the chorus so that it really pops, so that it only lives in the chorus and stuff like that. And he really just had a great approach with that kind of I guess songwriting science. And so it was really nice to bounce off him, because I bring a lot of, raw materials into the writing room, and and I often like to be the one to put that, initial ingredient in, and then, but I do really appreciate the sounding boards around that. So Courtney was really good for that. And so we had that initial session, and we did love letters, and then we started. I was just texting him saying like, I'm out of LA in a couple of days. Like we have to hang out again. Like let's go. And so he moved stuff around so we could hang out again. And then in that session we did Give Me the Wrench. So he's like, like we just, he was great. Super, super hardworking guy, and loved working with him. And then Susie was like I think it was the final. I think it was the final, songwriting session I had over there. It was, and it kept shrinking as the trip was going along. So like Susie had to be away before she was heading to Hawaii on a holiday. And so this window of our session just kept shrinking and shrinking. It got down to like 3 hours. And there was, with Susie's amazing discography and resume, it was a bit of pressure on the session. I wanted to go in there guns blazing. And so, I knew that I wanted it to be important. And I think I was thinking maybe subconsciously, like things were kind of filtering and getting put into their, respective filing cabinets, so that when I got in there, I was feeling quite inspired. And I do like a time limit. I find like I do meander if I'm not given sort of a deadline. So there was just no room for any I don't know, sort of pointless wandering. We walked in, sat down, picked up a guitar. I hadn't written anything beforehand, but just started playing some chords and went, oh my God, that's the vibe. Let's do that. I want this. We quickly recorded the guitar. She put down some drum machine, and while she was fiddling with, drum machine sounds, I went, okay, I think I'm done. And she was like, okay, do you have a verse? And I was like, no, I think I've got it. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, because Dave, our manager, had like fired me up so hard. He was just like, he's like, here's a list of 10 songs that were written in half an hour that, have been number ones. He's like, you go. He's like, and I was like, all right, I'm up. And so, and I think because I wasn't allowed to like overthink things, I had this like purge and was able to, we wrote the song Forgiving Spree that formed like the umbrella of the whole record, that it was almost like I was so off guard with my own subconscious, things slipped through the net and I wasn't able to keep up. And then that line just means so much to me now, and the record, and it made everything make sense, because often I write in these dribs and drabs and I have this mosaic of my life, but it takes songs like Race Car Blues and Daisy Chain and Forgiving Spree and Chamomile to put things all in perspective and wrap things up. And I hadn't found that song yet, and I had been searching like high and low for it, and I was trying to shoehorn other songs into its place, but it wasn't working. And then and then anyway, that song came about. I was just like, yep. And then I was like, I'll play drums on it. She was like, okay. She had an acoustic kit there. I jumped on the kit. I quickly played the drums, and then I was like, see you later. Have fun in Hawaii. And then we've just been chatting on text, and it all just came about. And then the same sort of thing, I hit her up and was like, hey, I know I've done, most of the production of this myself because I reworked it when I got home, but I was like, I need that demo vocal. And so she was so kind and sent it over, and she was like, yeah, let's go. It was like, it was one take, done. And it was just like, yeah, that was it.
I love that. That is so good. Is that, I guess, in terms of your songwriting, I know in the lead up to today's chat with yourself, kind of doing some research and kind of listening to some recent, I guess, interviews, that this record, maybe self-dubbed by yourself, is more, I don't want to say like more mature, but like that it feels like the subject matter of some of these tracks are moving outside of maybe like broken relationships or whatever it may be, that it's kind of looking at those things. When you started songwriting, and it was just interesting when you said shoehorning other tracks into that kind of, I almost want to say like, what's the word that's used for it? Like not the motto, like the creed of the record, or like the mission statement, sorry. Yeah. Could you tell that there was a different maturity in your songwriting this time around when you kind of started writing these tracks, or was it once that you found that I guess upon reflection, some of the others then did fall into place of like, oh, that's not something I would have done maybe on previous records?
I think a lot of life had happened to me in the span of a couple of years, and much more. I'd had so many more events that made me have a lot of existential introspection, because I'd had a lot of deaths and I got married, and then I'd had later in the piece I had my daughter after we had a miscarriage, and there was just lots, I'd lost my stepmom, and things were just, I don't know, just feeling a lot more I don't know, I think I just had lived more life or something. And so I had to approach songwriting. The things that were coming off my chest were maybe a bit more, just a bit heavier, I think, as we all do as we grow up and we're forced to, no one escapes any of these, the griefs, the pangs of, modern life. But I think it's like, it was more just, I think, just a knee jerk of all of that. I don't think I set out to be more mature with it, or had it's time to grow up, Benny boy, and tuck my shirt in. But it was just necessity. I've always seen songwriting as a vessel to put a lot of my feelings in, because I don't really share a lot of those in my day-to-day life with friends and family and stuff. So just naturally it kind of moved with the times. Yeah.
100%. Are we able to, like, we're primarily like a songwriting podcast, are we able to kind of delve into, I guess, what originally got you interested in songwriting and writing lyrics and kind of using that, as you said, as a vessel to be able to talk through some stuff?
Yeah, so I always, because I grew up playing drums, the songwriting was always like a real secret pursuit of mine, because I always thought I had such a terrible voice, and that tiny voice sometimes sneaks back in every now and again. But I just had no faith in myself, and I didn't have, early on there was no one in the music industry that was writing the sort of songs that I was writing. Well, not that I was aware of, because as you grow up, it's basically just commercial pop and rock that's that I was around me, and there wasn't so much of a discovery of music through the internet as there is now, where the services like streaming and stuff, where you get an algorithm and served things that you're interested in. It was like you'd find it from someone's older brother or sister, like that's how you found it. And so, I don't know, I always kind of wrote in a very just sort of strange and metaphorical way. And then, because I never wanted anyone to know what I was writing about. And then I think, and I've just loved the language too. And so you just don't, in pop music that would be on the radio, you don't hear sort of heavily shrouded metaphorical songs. It's usually quite straight to the point, which I love as well. There's no shame in that, but it just wasn't the stuff that was coming out of me naturally. So I often thought of myself as, I never thought of myself as a songwriter. It was more just like, oh, that's that little thing that I do and no one knows about. And then it just sort of started, I have a few friends to thank that just got around me so hard and just became, obsessive with some of these demos, like I'd upload them to SoundCloud and just share to a few friends, and they would be like, this is amazing, and sing along, and and it just grew from there. And then the confidence kind of crept in, played a few solo shows and things, and I think it was only in kind of even like the race car blues era I really started to view myself as like a songwriter. It just it wasn't something that came quite naturally to me. I never really stepped into the role and made it my own until then. But that's kind of my journey with it. And now I see it as such like a lifelong pursuit, like a craft that I'll just chip away at, and I'm just so wowed by music every day that other people write and that I hear, and once you would know, because you speak to all these people and you're sort of get to hear their stories. Like, once you start becoming interested in songs as opposed to just the music that you like, your world opens up, and you can it doesn't matter it's about genre anymore or anything, or you start to view songs as these just universal little gifts that get sprinkled down, and people are just lucky recipients like me who sometimes get one that shoots through, and then yeah, it's just nice. I don't know.
It is such an incredible thing to find songwriting, and as you said, be, like myself, very lucky to speak to all these different people. What I love more specifically about your story, and not necessarily similar to any others that we've spoken to, but every now and again you do get someone who, I love that it wasn't necessarily forced. It wasn't that, as you said, that you were listening or trying to emulate what was on radio. It was just this thing that you did for yourself that it kind of eventually and organically turned into something that you did. And I think that's really special as well, because when you're not trying to copy or emulate, you can kind of then make your own rules in how you want to build it is, or like do it is, compose what you want to compose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't, if anyone out there's a long-time fan of the band, there was no choruses until our second record or something. Like, I just didn't have any. It was just no songwriting science or structure. Like, there was no rules, and I try and tap into that often when that's the thing that you don't want to lose, I guess, is that not necessarily song structure, but you just don't want to lose that curiosity that you had as a kid, because sometimes talent is just the most abundant thing in this world in music. Like, we can't scroll on my in any of my social media For You pages without coming across what I think are a billion other people who are more talented than me. And so it's not about talent. It really isn't. It's just about being able to distill like your personal message and your story into songs. And that's the only currency that this whole industry spins on, is just being able to tell that story. And I think once later in life, as confidence started to creep in, and I started to sort of see that as a sentiment to be like empowered through, then it was easier for me to sort of call myself a songwriter and write music, because it was daunting at the start because I'm not musically trained and I've never had a guitar lesson, and I've never only learnt what a key signature was like a couple of years ago. Like, I'm not I'm not trained in any of this stuff, but I love it, and I love it like a 15-year-old kid still. So and that counts for more, I think.
100%. I think that if you can continue to have that outlook on it, it kind of pays in terms of just continuing to want to push that envelope of the band and of your songwriting skill and everything else. I'm wanting to kind of assess, as we've discussed, an album kind of built for the live arena. There are a bunch of shows coming up overseas first and then back in Australia in April. And I know that we've kind of already discussed that there's a few in-stores and like acoustic shows happening this week. For yourself, off the record, is there a front runner for favourite to play live, or one that you're enjoying at the moment in terms of giving it its live debut?
Definitely the final track on the record, Born Free. I love that song. Like, it's probably my favourite song I've ever written. I do like that song a lot, because it's, I have a million memories attached to every line in that song, and for me, it's quite vivid. Throughout the writing, and it happened. The writing process happened exactly how I like all of my favourite songs to happen, and that was when they just fall out, and it just feels like that was a really nice gift from someone else, that one. So I feel like I'm able to kind of love it objectively. It's not something I had to labour over, that I had to, really try and, scrape out of me. That was like, that one was, it just fell out. And so I feel like it's just like a Christmas present, that one. So I played it at a couple of acoustic in-stores, and we're going to do like a little piano version tonight in Melbourne. And I just can't wait for the big shows for that explosive ending on that one. And I think I often zigzag through these different phases of loving different styles of songwriting. And I think, you know, as someone who, as I'm sure you are, and a lot of your listeners are too, but the people that have quite broad music tastes, after a tight, you know, kind of rock-inspired record, just to finish on that as a palate cleanser, as a cool down, was really important to me. And just to go, I think for those fans that, you know, because, you know, I grew up as one of them. I'm not someone who gravitates towards the radio songs, to the singles of an album. I love the B-sides. Like and I'm sure most people who love songwriting, you know, a lot of the songs that are brilliant songs are just not as commercially viable as other songs. And so they sort of...
usually around track 7 or track 8. Yeah, it's usually those ones.
Yeah, it's when the album kicks off. And so I thought... yeah, it was just nice to have a bit of a zigzag with that song. And so it's kind of special for me because it would have been easy to make it just because with 9 songs, you know, you don't have a lot of room to kind of do light and shade. But I really fought for that one to be on there because even though it's a slow burn and stuff, it just means a lot to me.
It is a gorgeous track, and definitely anyone listening to this podcast, definitely worth your time. Please listen to the whole record, but it is an incredible way to kind of end the record as well, as you said, Ben. We would usually wrap things up asking our guests what they're currently listening to. For yourself, Ben, anything that is on high rotation at the moment?
High rotation at the moment? I've been going back. I'm having a moment where I'm like very obsessed with the producer and mixing engineer, Eric Valentine. So... who's just a freak show with production and mixing. So I've actually been listening to heaps of his catalogue. So he mixed like the Third Eye Blind self-titled record, and so I've been going through a lot of that and just you know, falling in love with all those drum tones again. And you know, he did like that Smash Mouth record, Queens of the Stone Age, and so I'm on a bit of a production, moment where I'm just sort of like listening for that stuff. But anything else that sort of caught me off guard? Been a bit lately on my plate because I recently filled out my Hottest 100. I've been actually really enjoying. And I haven't had to say this out loud yet, so I don't know if I'm saying the band name right, but it's either Wonder Horse or Wunder Horse. But I've been loving them. I think that and my algorithm's listening because I'm getting like every live show they've ever played, and I'm not complaining about it. But I'm loving that, the raw energy of that. It's really cool. And and just lots of rehearsals at the moment. So listening to a lot of myself, which I despise. So, yeah, it's that.
Look, it is release week. I think it's totally fair. If you had have just off the bat said a lot of your own music, I think it would have also been totally acceptable. I think that is very, very fair, but also extremely diverse choices of bands and artists that you're listening to. And I kind of love the producer kick in terms of not necessarily listening to like an artist discography, but like a producer or engineer's work, because you're bound to hear different tricks that they use, but still used in different ways almost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm very obsessive about the studio process at the moment, and so I love his ethos, Eric Valentine. So sort of stealing little bits and pieces where I can.
Look, I absolutely love that. That's fantastic. Ben, thank you very much for coming to chat with us today about the brand new Slowly record. It is called Forgiving Spree. It's out right now. People will be able to buy it in today's show notes, and we'll make sure all the socials and everything else are tagged so that they can catch you on tour and all those kind of things. But thank you again so much for coming and have a chat.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.